Hello everyone, Josh here, and we're absolutely buzzing to tell you that today's video is sponsored by Squarespace. I mean, how good's that? But we'll tell you more about that in a little bit. Comic books being comic books, death is a scarily frequent occurrence. Now, they admittedly might not always be permanent, but still that doesn't take away from their impact most of the time. And this is especially true for Spider-Man. But in your grieving, have you ever stopped to think about what happens to a supervillain when they indeed kill their nemesis? Well, I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and this is what happened to everyone who killed Spider-Man. Number 10, Terraxia. In the grand scheme of Marvel Comics, Terraxia is an extremely minor character. However, she is one of the select few who is able to say that she has slain Spider-Man. This all-powerful rogue appeared in the Infinity Gauntlet, and she'd only actually appear in 3 issues before she herself was killed off. But during those 3 issues, Terraxia instantly made herself a major player by A, decapitating Iron Man, and B, beating Spider-Man to death with a rock. The shot of Spidey being killed isn't actually shown in Jim Starlin and George Perez's iconic tale. Instead, we readers see Terraxia mounting the wall crawler in one panel, then Thanos smiling as we see her again holding a bloody rock over Peter's dead body. When it happened, this very much was the very real death of the very real Peter Parker. Only, comics being comics, this arc then saw Adam Warlock and Nebula put the brakes on Thanos' scheme and reverse the universe back to its former self, as in the deaths of Iron Man, Spider-Man, and numerous others never technically happened. Number 9, Deadpool. The sheer erratic nature of Wade Wilson means that nobody is ever truly safe from the merc with a mouth. It's one thing to take down the bad guys, but Deadpool has often found himself getting into it with some of the more wholesome and heroic members of Marvel Comics. And one such person to have been in Wade's sights a time or two, of course, is Spider-Man. Two wise-quipping characters with certain clear similarities, the pair ended up in a truly bizarre situation in Spider-Man/Deadpool number 4. And as is often the case, that was solely down to Wade. Already established as good pals by this point in time, Deadpool began to think that Peter Parker was actually evil after someone hired Wilson to kill Peter in the first place. So much so, in fact, that the regenerating degenerate turned up on Peter's doorstep and just shot him dead from point-blank range. Yet again highlighting the insanity of Wade Wilson, doubt then started to set in as to whether or not the webhead was actually as evil as Wade had been led to believe. That resulted in Deadpool getting his wife to resurrect Spidey before Wilson again killed Peter after deciding that yep, this time he definitely was evil, only to then have another change of heart and have him brought back to life for a second time. Number 8, Kulan Gath. A supremely able sorcerer, in Uncanny X-Men number 191, Kulan Gath had turned Manhattan into a medieval chamber of terrors. Along to help Xavier's band of merry mutants though, we have our beloved Spidey, although Peter Parker actually ends up being used as a most extreme example of the villain's abilities. With a swanky magical amulet in his possession, the villain tortures and torments Spider-Man before literally crucifying him and finally putting him out of his misery. Thankfully for the webhead though, this whole gruesome scenario ends up erased out of existence when Doctor Strange and Alania Rasputin get together and reverse time. Even better for Spider-Man, the pair's timey-wimey shenanigans mean that all memories of the murder of Peter no longer exist. Number 7, the Symbiote suit. Amongst the slew of Marvel-driven content heading to Disney Plus in the future, there is one TV show many are eagerly anticipating, and that's the animated What If series. However, back in 1989's What If Volume 2, Number 4, the question of the day revolved around what would have happened had Peter allowed himself to be fully consumed by the alien symbiote. In standard canon, of course, Parker famously got rid of the black goo after he realized it had started to corrupt him, and the symbiote would then go on to bond with Eddie Brock to form the iconic Venom. In this alternative scenario though, Peter and the symbiote fully bond and become a different take on this supervillain. That is, until Reed Richardson's observations caused the symbiote to bail and then attach itself to the Hulk instead. So yeah, in this story there's now a Hulk-Venom hybrid running amok and just causing untold levels of mayhem. When Richards then checks up on Parker though, our hero has prematurely aged after being attached to the symbiote for too long. As Reed offers up his help, Peter collapses and dies of old age. The conclusion of this what-if story has a vengeance-seeking Black Cat eviscerate the symbiote with an energized blast.
Hey, hello there, what's up everybody, Adam Cleary here. Yes, I know you don't see me much anymore, but that's because I'm incredibly busy off nurturing the various creative and commercial endeavours of What Culture Limited. Anyway, one of the more interesting plates we're currently spinning is this awesome collaboration we've got going on between us here on What Culture Comics and none other than... Boom. Oh, it's in front, Squarespace. Now, Squarespace gives you an easy-to-use and visually powerful online space for you to build your own website. You want a blog? They've got those. You want a portfolio space for all your work? They got them too. You want to start a dedicated newsletter where you just Photoshop my head onto the bodies of CG dinosaurs, send it out to thousands of people and call it Jurassic Park? They do have tools for that. You could do it. I would be vigorously prosecuting, but you could do it. Anyway, I've been working on a top secret little project on the platform lately because we are hoping to launch brand new merch stores for every single one of the What Culture channels. And Squarespace genuinely has these amazing third-party tools on top of their already amazing e-commerce capabilities. It manages the inventory, it promotes all the products, it pushes it all onto social media. The thing is just a dream. You're not actually supposed to be seeing any of this yet, now that I think about it. Am I taking up enough of the screen to stop you? No, I'm not. You're ruining the surprise. But yes, we are using Squarespace here at What Culture Comics, and you should too, so we're gonna give you some money off. Your favorite. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial of the platform, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/whatculturecomics to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. I don't know when this is going to be ready, so don't get too excited about the whole thing. But when it does launch, obviously you gotta try and act shocked. Yeah? No? Yeah, fair enough, it is. It's your life, isn't it? Anyway, back to the video.
Number 6, Morlun. Where to even begin with Morlun? The early 2000s was a pretty strange time for Spider-Man comics, with J. Michael Straczynski penning The Amazing Spider-Man for the best part of 6 years. Firmly in the mixed bag category, at this time the writer had created a new uber-rogue dubbed Morlun. The character and elements of his mission objective were hugely intriguing, but that was then let down by some questionable writing and some really daft twists. Regardless of that though, Morlun himself was a bad dude who had spanned the entire multiverse, killing numerous spider totems, aka a bunch of beings like Spider-Man, who were all tied to the web of life and destiny. In the other, this vicious rogue beats Spider-Man to a pulp, tears out one of Peter's eyes, and then follows him to the hospital to finish off the job. After this, Peter transforms into a literal giant spider and rips out his foe's throat before dying himself from his previous wounds. Well, until we'd later see Spidey regenerate from a cocoon because, well, this was early 2000 Spider-Man and anything went. Number 5, Thanos. From December 1991's Spider-Man number 17, no one gets out of here alive sees Peter Parker killed off, albeit only temporarily. After saving 2 window cleaners from taking a dip with the deadly Ferrin chemical, Peter becomes exposed to the substance to such an extent that his heart stops beating. From there, we see Parker's journey into the afterlife, including his emotional realization that he may soon be reunited with Gwen Stacy. Instead of Gwen, the Wallcrawler is unfortunately greeted by none other than Thanos. The Mad Titan mocks Peter, pointing out how his most recent actions have caused a mother and her young daughter to become similarly exposed to the lethal chemical. And the youngster, Angelina, soon joins Parker in this most bizarre of realms. In a surprising twist, Death decides to return Peter and Angela back to the land of the living though, after Spidey pleads his case to her. Once back alive, old Webhead rushes his young pal to the hospital, dusts himself down, and then, in typical Peter Parker fashion, realizes that he's in hot water with Aunt May for smashing a bottle of barbecue sauce during this whole ordeal. Number 4, Wolverine. Another what-if story, 1989, featured a tale where Spider-Man, amongst countless others, were killed off as part of an offering dubbed What If the X-Men Had Lost Inferno. Readers saw a landscape where the demonic Inferno arc had been redone, and several notable members of Xavier's famed mutants were turned into demonic versions of themselves, with the world falling into chaos as these evil sorts ruled with an iron fist. On the other side of this though, Doctor Strange puts together a group of would-be rebels, and one such rebel is Spider-Man, but the Wallcrawler ends up as one of the many dead bodies piled high during this tale. Amongst Hulk snapping the neck of She-Hulk, Captain America casually murdered off panel, and Thor dying in an act of sacrifice, Spidey is slayed by Wolverine as Weapon X gleefully stabs Webhead in the back. By the close of this story, a Phoenix Force-wielding Rachel Summers purges the planet and saves the day in an extremely loose fashion, as Earth is restarted and reverted back to the primeval days. Number 3, Dr. Octopus. Dan Slott's Dying Wish arc of 2012 was a monumental one, changing the very foundations of Spider-Man in a truly jarring manner. That's because in Dying Wish, Peter Parker was in some ways dead, some ways in limbo, and in other ways very much alive. To clear things up, this tale found a terminally ill Dr. Octopus who was racing towards the Grim Reaper at an alarming rate. Forever with a plan though, Otto actually managed to swap his consciousness with that of Peter. That meant that Parker's consciousness was in Octavius's dying body, while the mind of Doc Ock was in the fit and healthy body of Spider-Man. As such, Parker experienced death, just it wasn't in his own body. However, on the other hand, the body of Peter Parker was alive and well, just with Dr. Octopus at the helm. As for the body that Peter's consciousness had been switched to, that was now just a heap of bones and lifeless flesh, leading to his conscious becoming a trapped spirit in the Ock-controlled body of Parker. Are you keeping up? Yeah, it is a tad confusing at first glance, but this all worked brilliantly as Otto embarked on a mission to be a better Spider-Man than Peter Parker could ever dream of. That Doc Ock iteration of Superior Spider-Man managed to get his own 44-issue comic book title before Otto Octavius finally allowed Peter to have his body back. Number 2, Green Goblin. What sort of Spider-Man list would be complete without mention of the Green Goblin? Throughout so many of Peter Parker's most traumatic moments, Norman Osborn has been front and center with the best view in the house. And that was very much the case in the aptly named Death of Spider-Man arc from the realm of Ultimate Spider-Man. There, the ultimate take on Parker died while saving his nearest and dearest, as a collection of injuries tragically took their toll, and leading the charge in all of this was Norman Osborn himself. Earlier in that story, Peter had taken a literal bullet for Captain America after Frank Castle had the Sentinel of Liberty in his crosshairs. Then, in his weakened state, Spidey rushed home to protect Aunt May after realizing that a goblin-led group of rogues with nefarious intentions were heading for the Parker residence. In one of the most hard-hitting moments in Marvel Comics history, this battle ends with Spider-Man dying, like for real. Going out like the quintessential hero, Peter takes down his rivals, including killing Norman, protects May, succumbs to his wounds, and then gets reunited with Uncle Ben in the afterlife. Number 1, Kraven the Hunter. 1987's Kraven's Last Hunt is viewed as one of the greatest Spider-Man stories ever. The biggest of big game hunters, Kraven the Hunter views Spider-Man as the ultimate prize, and thus in Kraven's Last Hunt, we see his masterful plan play out beautifully. Not only does he want to defeat Spidey, he wants to prove that he can be a greater hero than his rival. After landing in New York, drugging Spider-Man and taking him captive, Kraven does what few comic book readers of the time could ever imagine. He shot, killed, and then buried Peter Parker. From there, the villain throws on his own variation of Spider-Man's black suit, which was the outfit of choice for the Wallcrawler at the time, and dishes out brutal violence on the city's wrongdoers. The kicker here, though, is that Kraven had only shot Parker with a hefty tranquilizer. Once the now not dead Spider-Man climbs out of his grave, he confronts Kraven and is met by a sincere warrior who admits that he just wanted to prove that he could get the better of his longtime foe. Alarmingly, then the Hunter kills himself with a shotgun, having achieved all in life that he'd set out to do. So that's our list. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. What do you think of these times that Peter Parker has died, and are there any that I've missed off here? While you're down there, could you also give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to whatculture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't though, I've been Josh, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.